Jayland's mother, Pamela, and his sister, Jada, say he was not violent and had no criminal record. As they lay Jayland to rest, they are left calling for answers, asking why their unarmed loved one was brought down in a violent hail of bullets.
We just want to know what happened and why did this have to happen to him.
Join me for more on this story, our former police officer Brandon Tatum, host of the Officer Tatum Show and podcast, Kevin Chill Hurd, president of the Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists, and Jonathan Harris, political analyst. Brandon, I want to start with you first. You posted the body cam footage on your Instagram almost immediately after police released it, and you gave a very detailed breakdown of what you saw, which appeared for you to think that this was a justified shooting. Why do you think that is?
Well, because you look at the totality of circumstances. You have a young man who's fleeing a traffic stop. He apparently fired a weapon at the police while they were in pursuit. He ends up getting to a particular location. He jumps out of a moving car with a ski mask on. And as he flees from police, he turns at the police. They attempt to tase him, which is a use of force continuum example. And he continues on and he postures up at police in the parking lot, and then they use deadly force against him. According to the law, the totality of circumstance and the use of force policy, it appears to be a justified use of force that unfortunately resulted in the death of that young man.
Jonathan, what's your response to what Brandon just said?
It's a tough sell for me to be on the side of history to suggest that for an alleged traffic violation, the punishment is death by firing squad. I think it's a bit absurd. And I think that we have seen enough of this from police departments all across the country to recognize that this is not, you can't explain away every single one of these situations. At a certain point, you have to realize there is a systemic problem and it requires a systemic solution. I cannot imagine anyone can truly say firing over 100 rounds at a person who did not fire at the police during the foot pursuit and was not carrying a weapon at the time he was killed, to fire at him over 100 times, shooting him 60 times, to call that reasonable is just frankly absurd.
Well, there's two things that are missing out of this context is that he fired a gun at the police. They don't have X-ray
allegedly
vision. They don't. It's not allegedly. They saw it on the poll cam. It's not that that they have X-ray vision. They can see if he had a gun or not. All of the totality of circumstances, his behavior would lead them to believe that he had a gun. And when he postures up in a firing platform and a firing stance, and every police officer reacts to his behavior, then it's reasonable to believe that they believed he pulled a gun on them.
Reasonable, fair-minded people understand that shooting 100 rounds at a person, connecting 60 of them for an alleged traffic violation is absurd. And that's just, quite frankly, that's just the fact of the matter.
So Brandon and Jonathan, I want to move this conversation forward and get Kevin in here, really quick. We do know that President Biden obviously visited Cleveland and said that if there's any wrongdoing, then obviously the Department of Justice will get involved. But Kevin, it seems like this story has sort of fallen from the headlines. We don't hear about it as much anymore. Why do you think that is?
Well, part of the problem is what it always is. There's not enough representation of people who look like the community within the mass media, the larger media within those various cities, which is one of the issues that we have as the Black Journalists Association, is to advocate whenever we can for Black journalists to have an unbiased story and to advocate for those families to continue to keep this very important story in the news, in the cycle, so we can get to the bottom of fair assessment of this travesty.
And how do we keep, this memorial? I mean, his family obviously is saying goodbye, family and friends to him this week. What can people do to keep justice for Jayland, the movement, going forward?
Well, like they said in the 60s, where there's people, there's power. So the people, the news, we cover the stories. We don't create the stories, but it is up to us to tell the story and keep the story going as the people on the ground, as the organizations, the gatekeepers, the Gen X, more importantly, on the ground to keep the pressure on all aspects of this story, not just the police department, but the media themselves.
Gentlemen, I want to thank all three of you for joining us here on Revolt Black News Weekly. We'll be right back.